welcome to the NCC Newsroom at the Newhouse School of Public Communications. I'm Tyler Melito.
And I'm Sam Gelfand. You're watching Democracy in Action, a project of the Broadcast and Digital Journalism and the Magazine News and Digital Journalism departments at Syracuse University.
This is the second of 5 live streams covering Election Day in Onondaga County. We have reporters at dozens of polling places in central New York watching the 2021 races.
Polls across Onondaga County are seeing less traffic than in previous years. Our Democracy in Action reporter Caitlin McCarthy is live from one site in Van Buren. Caitlin?
Thanks, guys. I'm currently standing outside the town of Van Buren offices where right now no traffic here, no line, and voting only since 6 a.m. has only had about 220 votes. I spoke with polling manager Gail Keller, and she says in non-presidential election years, they see a lot less voters compared to presidential election years. And also due to the pandemic still ongoing, many people are still afraid to vote in person and rely to early voting. But for Central New Yorkers, they still have 7 hours to cast in their votes for local representatives. And for Democracy in Action, I'm Caitlin McCarthy. Back to the studio.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Another proposal on this year's ballot concerns environmental rights. Democracy in Action's Liam Crowley is live in studio to break down what the amendment would mean for New York State. Liam?
Thanks, Tyler. Proposal 2 has been a long time coming for environmentalists in New York State, over a decade to be exact. On the back of your ballots this election, New York State's second referendum reads that the proposed amendment of Article 1 of the New York Constitution would establish the right of each person to clean air and water and a healthful environment. For New York Water Environmental Association member Libby Ford, simply being on the ballot is not enough. Ford says she believes that the vagueness of the proposal's language could result in up to half a decade before the amendment would really take effect.
It's probably going to be 3 to 5 years of court cases before we really know what the amendment means.
States like Pennsylvania and Montana already have green amendments in place. The former puts an emphasis on preserving specific environmental values, while the latter clarifies that the state legislature is responsible for administering and enforcing this amendment. Now, the Empire State's environmental proposal promises clean air and water, but fails to mention how it will be enforced. Ford says Prop 2's language will play well among voters, but is concerned about this lack of specificity.
Sounds like motherhood in apple pie. Who's not for clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment? But I think the ramifications, there could be downsides that people haven't thought about.
Early voting results are expected to begin rolling in around 9 p.m. tonight. Tyler, Sam, back to you.
Liam, thank you so much. In addition to referendums, many voters are drawn to the polls for other reasons. Our own Arjun Menon has more on the story.
Here at the Bellevue Heights United Methodist Church in Syracuse, people are making their mark on democracy. Voters like Chayla Surratt say the mayoral election in Syracuse is the most important thing on the ballot today.
We have some major issues with generational poverty here, and we're at a pivotal time, with the conversations around I-81 and what's going to happen with that population. So I want to make sure that the person that we put in leadership are thinking about those communities that generally have been disenfranchised and making sure that they have a voice as well.
Surratt's husband, Ahmad Rahim, adds that voting in local elections is important to him because he came to the United States as a refugee from Cambodia in the 1980s, where voting rights were not offered. While voters like Surratt and Rahim are focused on more localized issues, voters like Linda Abair have concerns over a hot-button topic in the wider American political discourse. Abair brought her 2 daughters to the polls and says education in her children's schools is the most pertinent issue this election, specifically taking aim at the practice of critical race theory.
I want it out of the schools. I don't think it's right. I think they're trying to indoctrinate the next generation. I think school is to learn how to read and write and do math and science and leave the ideology up to their parents.
Despite it not being a federal election year, it is clearly a crucial moment for the politics of Central New York. Reporting from Syracuse, Arjun Menon, NCC News.
Polling places across Syracuse have seen a decrease in voter turnout compared to last year's presidential election. Democracy in Action reporter Alexis Raleigh is live from Eastwood Senior Center to tell us more about this decrease in voters.
I'm here at Eastwood Community Center in Onondaga County, where volunteers have seen a decrease in voters after the 2020 election brought an overwhelming amount of Syracuse residents to cast their ballots. So far, this site has seen around 140 voters and plan on seeing more throughout the day. Polls opened at 6 this morning and closed at 9 tonight. In Syracuse, New York, I'm Alexis Raleigh. Back to you.
Alexis, thank you. History teaches us plenty about our democracy. Democracy in Action reporter Ryan Nelson shares how one local high school teacher uses it to inspire young voters.
Patricia Mullaney is a high school history teacher in Baldwinsville. She was one of the first people to vote at Nottingham this morning. Mullaney says in the classroom, she tries to teach the values of learning the past to impact your vote on the future.
Yes, we're talking about history and that's over with and it's done with. I go, but you can play around. You can mess with your ideas with these guys and you can test where you care about issues and topics safely, because in the real world, I really want you to be confident in your choices.
Even though she's not a teacher here at Nottingham High School, she still believes that teaching can go beyond the classroom.
Just with honesty, right? If a kid asks you a question, you tell them what you know and you admit what you don't. And high school students seem to appreciate that. And I think my 5-year-old does too.
In a local election like this year, voter turnout is usually lower, but Mullaney says these years might be even more important than others.
I said this is the most direct democracy you're going to get. If you want to have a say, you don't want to send a letter to the president, right? You want to send a letter to your representative, you want to send your letter to your mayor. If you want to get things done, that's where it's starting, and you can see more impact here than anywhere else.
Reporting from Nottingham High School, Ryan Nelson, NCC News.
If you think your vote doesn't count, a study released today suggests otherwise. The nonprofit Urban Institute found the 2020 census missed over 1.5 million Americans, including 225,000 New Yorkers. This has a direct effect on the makeup of Congress. Had just 89 more people filled out their census forms, New York would have 27 seats in the House of Representatives instead of 26.
Voters at Reformed Church of Syracuse share that while turnout is down, this mayoral election is as important as ever. That is all the time we have for you on this edition of Democracy in Action. From all of us here at the Newhouse School of Public Communications, I'm Tyler Melito.
And I'm Sam Gelfand. Our next live stream is at 4 p.m. We'll see you then.